Below are some of the tools that we'll use in the class. Some of the tools are specific to bookbinding, and others have an application in just about any art making scenario. I'll start with the brushes. There's no particular order, but we'll use glue brushes. I like to have a very soft, or by keeping it clean, it will stay flexible, I should say. This is probably not a good example to use, but it's one I've had. Many bookbinders do not like to use brushes with a metal ferrule because it transfers rust onto the brushes, and you don't want the rust to get into the paste and go into the paper. But I do have some of these here. A brush that's almost in a line of disposable ones. I use these kind. A lot of these are in the classroom, and sometimes I'll even cut it if I need a stiffer or shorter brush. This type is more preferred by binders. It doesn't have metal, and if you wash it after each use, they will last you a very long time. My favorite brushes I order online from McLean's. It's a printmaking supplier in Oregon. They sell these in a range of thicknesses. They're a little bit pricier, but I take good care of them by washing them, and they've lasted me a long time. Tweezers are useful, maybe not in every project, but sometimes they're very useful. A straight edge, people like to use a metal straight edge. When you use some of your cutting tools, you'll want the straight edge to go, you'll want the blade to go along metal. Many people like cork backed. If you're going to have one ruler, a minimum of 12 inches, I like to have shorter rulers on hand for other projects. I use triangles quite a bit, and this triangle is made out of aluminum, and I've had it, many of these tools I've had for many years. In the classroom, I make and distribute around these little smaller triangles for when we are using, when we're making portfolio boxes, or maybe we're finishing a hardcover book. But I just cut them out of plastic rulers, and you'll find them around. Something I like to use are dividers. By turning this knob, I can take a measurement. If I want to measure something, I don't have to use the markings on a ruler, and then I won't forget. And so it's a smaller divider. I bought it online on an auction. This is most likely cheaper, and it does exactly the same thing. It's just a little bit larger. I think I bought this at a big box store. Bone folders, you don't need all shapes and sizes, but over the years I have found that the Teflon are the most expensive, but they're really the nicest to work with. I keep a range of shapes just to have them. This odd-shaped one is not bone or Teflon. It's just simply plastic, and it tends to work. More traditional bone folders or folding bones come in a range of sizes and come in a range of shapes. This one I've had over 20 years, and at some point it fell on the concrete floor and broke. But I still use it, so when I need something small, so they're handy. And I have found that a guitar pick, in a pinch, if you're trying to save money on supplies, if you have a guitar pick or know someone has a guitar pick, I've used these quite a bit in my classes, and so they're useful. Needles, of course, I keep in a tin. In the bottom of the tin, I will often in the bottom of the tin, I'll put some magnetic material, like on the back of some of these little mascots. I've separated out the two that I'll talk about below, but one of them is a sharp. This is a blunt needle, and this one is a little bit sharper. To the eye, they may not look that different, but to the touch they are. I like these because they have a large egg-shaped eye which makes putting the thread through it much easier. I like to keep them on these little magnets so they don't roll around. The needles that I do use most frequently in class I get from Talus online, and I buy this harness needle, which is the blunt one, and this one, which is called bookbinders. They're both, nice size, and they're easy to thread. And this is what we have here. A utility or a small craft knife. As long as I've been working, I've found that this shape, this pointed shape, is my favorite. Sometimes when you buy a knife in a kit, it might have a rounded blade, which I don't find as useful. We're using a knife with an adjustable side here. We can use the knife to cut through folds of paper, or we can only show this much of it and then break these parts off as they become dull. And when you store them, you can place the sharp place inside. Here's one that I use that's a little sturdier. This one also has a little slit there that I can pull this off, and I can slide it over here and then use it to break it. This utility knife is more useful if you're cutting binding board. It also has the ability to put the blade away. Some people call these utility knives. I've always called them a mat knife, but in class we have some cut trimmers and a board shear. So I don't find in class I use these as much. When I'm cutting paper that's folded, I like to use longer straight edges, and so we have some here. The thread that we're most likely to use in class is an Irish linen like this, and it's about a number 18. There are threads that are thinner and thicker, but this is the one I most commonly keep in class. I use beeswax a few passes with the thread. This is an old piece that's been around a while. Pencil. These mechanical pencils with 0.5 millimeters have a real sharp point, and if I want to be accurate in placing lines, these are good. I try to always keep replacement leads or refill leads. Clearly a traditional pencil is always useful. For poking holes in pages or folios or board, I use an awl. This is an awl sold in art supply stores for bookbinding. It's an affordable one, but these clay tools with a sharp needle are as useful and much cheaper. If you buy one at a store, you may find that the needle comes out a little farther. This one has been pushed in because it's kind of old. Pair of scissors, any kind of scissors. Sometimes I have larger ones and small ones like these. I tend to use these primarily to cut thread and not so much to cut paper. I use these tools for cutting paper or the paper cutters in the room. And a cutting board. This one is a synthetic or plastic, what some people call self-healing, and you can cut on that, and if you have this at your home, you can use that as well. Often we'll just use a scrap piece of bookbinder's board. This is a good start to get an introduction to the tools that we'll use.